How do you set boundaries? I am sure that you already have some rules and boundaries in place, but let's go ahead and go over some best practices when setting boundaries anyway. Rule number one, be clear and concise. Make sure that expectations are underscored and understood. You can even have, as you're having conversations with the kids about what your expectations are, what the boundaries are, have them repeat back to you in their own words what they understand the boundaries to be and what they understand the consequences to be. Very, very helpful in making sure that they understand what's expected of them, so that you can reinforce the consequences and hold them to the consequences when, not if, when the boundaries are broken. Because it's going to happen. They're kids. That's what happens. We all did it. It's to be expected, and it's okay. It's a learning process. Make sure that you, as the parent, are consistent in the enforcement of the consequences. I beg and plead you to remain consistent with the enforcing of the consequences. Remember we talked about earlier that kids need and want boundaries? So if we aren't consistent in enforcing the boundaries, then they really don't exist, do they? Or they exist for no reason. The kids then don't really trust us. They don't know when we're really meaning it and when we don't really mean it. So do yourself a favor, do your kids a favor, do your family a favor. Enforce the consequences when the boundaries are broken. Sometimes, on a rare occasion, you can actually negotiate or be a little bit more nimble. And the example that I will give you is if there is a sleepover, then bedtime doesn't need to be, the same bedtime doesn't need to be adhered to. If there is a family movie that you're gonna watch and it goes past bedtime, that's okay. Again, it's a rare occasion. You can reinforce the why behind why we're bending the boundaries tonight, right now. And it's not something that happens on a weekly occasion, happens every once in a while. If and when it does come time to revisit boundaries, because our kids grow up and everything changes, you'll start to see that when there is a request for the boundaries to be modified on a more frequent basis. And that is when you then sit down and have a conversation with the kids about, okay, this used to work for us in the past. You're growing up. I see that. I think that we can change these boundaries a little bit. And here's what the new boundaries will be, or engage in a conversation with the kids to say, what do you think they should be? You'll then get their input, which also allows for more buy-in then. And you can also talk about the consequences again. This is something that can be done on a seasonal basis. If you joined us at all in the summer setup, this is something that we talked about. If you've seen some of the other blogs on I Shine Bright or some of the other videos, you'll see that I talk about this a lot because our boundaries are based in values. So the values themselves don't change, but how we enforce them and the guardrails, if you will, around those boundaries do change with time, because we all change. So it's to be expected. The other parting thought on how to set boundaries and to underscore my request for you, pleading with you to remain consistent, is that we are always teaching our kids how to parent. So if you are willy-nilly with the boundaries, they may think that they are going to be willy-nilly with the boundaries. In the way that we communicate, if it's respectful, if it's engaging, that's teaching them how to parent, but then also just to be an adult and to be another human being in conversation with other individuals. So there are always multiple layers to everything, and it's just something to keep in mind.